We're in Chapter 12, Emotion. Now we reach the high level of brain activity. Studies, some of them can use animal, but more and more of them are going to use human as a subject. Let's look at the methodology. First one, self-report. So they can ask the subject to tell you how do they feel. And the second one is behavior observation. They can look at their facial expression. In human, this is pretty useful because we use our facial expression. We have very complicated facial expression, and we use this to communicate with other people. So we can look at their face and know how they feel. And the third one is physiological measure. Because your emotion, your autonomic nervous system play a big role in your emotion. When you're nervous, when you're anxious, your sympathetic nervous system will be activated, and they will increase your heart rate, increase your sweating. So we can measure the physiological response. And to talk about emotion, we have to talk about your autonomic nervous system. We talk about this part in your nervous system. And now let's review them. And that's the system not under your voluntary control. You have no voluntary control of this system. Your autonomic nervous system can be divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Your sympathetic, we call it fight or flight. That's the systems ask your body, okay, it can activate your whole body to increase your chance to survive. So you will dilate the pupil, make you be able to see clearly, increase your breathing rate, your heart rate, and inhibit your digestive function because this is for long-term survival. And it makes all your body ready to handle those quick emergency situations, so you're able to survive. And the parasympathetic, this is for long-term survival. That's after the danger is gone, and your body will decrease your heart rate, decrease your breathing rate, enhance your digestive function, because that's for long-term survival. And these two systems need to be balanced. We talk about that in Unit 3. And when any one of them is enhanced, it can, or is super activated, it can cause the problem. Like we're going to talk about the panic attack and anxiety. This is because of this system become too activated. So you have these two systems, and when we talk about the emotion, well, the autonomic nervous system play a big role. And the previous slides, that's the sympathetic function, and this slide, that's the parasympathetic function. And let's look at the theory of emotion. It's not easy to study emotion because this is a high-level brain function. So some psychologists, they have their theory and not perfect. So let's start from the James Lange theory. Their theory is one direction. That's how I explain it, one direction. You have the outside stimulus, and this stimulus goes through your sensory system. So we talk about this one in Chapter 4. And it will go to your brain and cause the autonomic arousal. Very straightforward, right? One activated one. And once you have the autonomic arousal, your brain say, oh, okay, well, I can have the emotion. So like you see the snake, and you have the arousal, and you know your fear. Is it really that simple? A little bit oversimplified, right? So their theory is you have outside stimulus, then you smile. And your brain knows, oh, I'm smiling, I must be happy. So that's their theory. It's good. They start to talk about emotion, they start to explain emotion. But in general, for most of the psychologists, they believe their theory is not enough to explain those complicated brain activity. So let's look at the Singer's theory, a little bit modified. So this time is you still have the outside stimulus, and this stimulus will go to your sensory field, and your 5 sensory systems will turn them into your brain, okay? And they will be analyzed in your brain. So you have the stimulus part, you have the context part. The stimulus part decides the autonomic arousal. So your heart rate increase, okay, increase how much? It goes from 70 beats per minute to 90, well, that increase, or from 70 beats a minute to 200 times per minute. That's a lot. That's this part, arousal part. But your emotion depends on this part. It's the context. Your heart rate increase that much is because you see a bear coming towards you, or your heart rate increase that much is because your girlfriend is hugging you. They're different. They will affect different emotion. So this time, the context, your brain gonna interpret this result, and it will decide what kind of emotion it is. And that's more acceptable theory, because this time your brain not just passively receive the input from your autonomic nervous system, and your brain really participate in deciding what kind of emotion you need to assign to it, and based on the context. And the autonomic arousal, it decides on the intensity, only the intensity part. That's the key part. The intensity is decided on the physiological response, but the context will decide what kind of emotion. And that's one example. So when you see a snake, your heart rate increase, and your brain found, oh, my heart rate increase, and your visual system tell you there is a snake image, and your brain combine these two. Why my heart rate increase? It must be the snake. So the emotion the brain assigned to it is fear. And some psychologists do the experiment. Yeah, they want to support the Singer theory, and they will give the subject the cortisol, the stress hormone, and the stress hormone will increase the heart rate, right? So the older subject, they experience their sympathetic response, and they will put them into 2 different groups, and in the groups they give them a questionnaire, and that's the subject. Okay, they're gonna finish those 20 different questionnaire, and they did not tell them in the same room. They're gonna take the test in the same room with the other subject. Is actually not a subject. It is an experimenter. So the experimenter gonna show them different kind of emotional response. So every time a subject paired with the experimenter, and all the questions they ask are the same. And apparently this subject, they will go through all the questionnaire, and one question asks them, okay, how many men your mom slept with before she married your dad? Yeah, that's really the question they ask. Very insulting. And in group 1, the experimenter will behave very angry. They will say, what kind of insulting question is this? They will throw the questionnaire on the floor and walk away. And now the subject, they watch the subject's emotion. They say, well, okay, I experienced those physiological response because the stress hormone increased their heart rate, increased their breathing rate, and they feel those physiological response. And they see the other experimenter show the angry emotion. So more of them will say their emotion is anger. Compare with the other group. The other group, they go to the other room, they do exactly the same questionnaire, and they are paired with another experimenter. The other experimenter have those goofy response. They are very, very happy, very, very high, and they will look at the questionnaire, say, oh, how many men my mom slept with before he married my dad? Well, let me think, 30, okay, and looks very happy. And that subject experienced the same physiological response. Those heart rate increase, blood pressure increase, and he looked at the other experimenter and say, wow, he experienced those euphoria feeling, and I must feel happy. So in that group, actually more of them report they feel happy compared with the other group that feel anger. So they try to support the Singer theory, say your emotion, okay, the physiological response only decide the intensity. is your brain decide what kind of emotion you're going to assign to. And this the other experiment, the bridge experiment. If you're interested, you can watch this video. And they asked the young, attractive female, and on the bridge, on different kind of bridge, stable one and very risky one, and they will stop the male and give them questionnaire. And after they finish the questionnaire, they will give them the young, attractive female will give them their phone number, her phone number, and ask him that I can explain to you my experimental results, and you can call me. And it turned out less male in the steady bridge call back, more males in the risky stage. And they use this to explain, because your testosterone level is high, your stress hormone level is high in this kind of bridge, you feel risky and your heart rate increase, your sympathetic response is high. So when you do the questionnaire and you have those physiological response and make you think you fall in love with that guy, with that girl, not that guy, that girl. So more males are willing to go back to that female. The application, so you found why the guy asked you out and take you to the Six Flags, take the roller coaster. You know, he must take my class before, and he's trying to make you fall in love with him. Because when you have those high intensity of physiological arousal and your sensory system say, okay, this is a guy in front of me and he must be my savior. So that's how people fall in love. That's an application of Singer theory. So why do we need to have emotion? Turn out they're helpful. This is why we have emotion. Positive emotion, so if you are super happy, what's the advantage? You are more open to new ideas, opportunities. So we do have some people that are very happy, and that's their advantage. But we do have people that always look so serious, right? That's this one. They still have some advantage. You don't want your company CEO to be super happy. Say, let's put those $2 million into this project, see if it works or fail. We would rather they make a serious decision. So that's the mild set mood, their advantages. So they all have advantage and shortcomings. We talk about this person, the gauge, in the chapter 3 in the nervous system when we talk about the frontal lobe. So he worked in a railroad company. He damaged his prefrontal cortex, and he showed very little emotion. So after he damaged his prefrontal cortex, he made a lot of bad decisions, like he abandoned his family, and he got in serious drinking problem, and he made a lot of bad life choice. He could not keep any career. And what's the function of this area? So it turned out is for decision making. That's what we conclude in unit 3. But also the prefrontal cortex is so high level, so it also got involved in your emotion, and also your the feeling, because he showed very little emotion. So it turned out your emotion can affect your decision making as well. EQ. So this is pretty hot topic about 20 years ago. So people talk about, okay, if you have a high EQ, you tend to make the right life decisions, and your life will be more successful. That's about 20 years ago. And they compare people, they have a good emotion control with people with bad emotion control. So turn out not too much science evidence support that. So yeah. Okay, let's take a break.